spent in a miserable way.
U.S. News: no heat for days at a jail in Brooklyn where hundreds of inmates were sick and frantic. What you need to know to start the day. More than 1,000 inmates have been stuck in freezing cells at a federal jail on the Brooklyn waterfront that has had limited power and heat for at least this week, according to federal public defenders and leaders of the union representing the jail's corrections officers. They just stay huddled up in the bed, said June Vasabai, the case manager at the jail and the treasurer of the local chapter of the American Federation of Government Employees, which represents about 500 corrections officers at the jail. The jail, the Metropolitan Detention Center, houses more than 1,600 inmates and lies in an industrial swamp near the waterfront in Sunset Park, Brooklyn. Some inmates the accounts of conditions at the jail were described to the New York Times by 6 lawyers and paralegals with local federal defenders officers, who had spoken with around 3 dozen inmates at MDC. 2 union leaders, a spokeswoman for Herman Key, the jail's warden, said in an email that the building experienced a partial power outage on Saturday but denied that it had affected heat and hot water in the jail's housing units. In an emailed statement, the Federal Bureau of Prisons confirmed that the jail was experiencing a partial power outage and operating on emergency power. Bells have heat, and the Bureau of Prisons indicated that the electrical failure was related to Con Edison, which it said had been dealing with numerous power emergencies in the community. A spokesman for the utility, Robert McGee, disputed the characterization and said Con Edison had not had problems in New York during the cold spell. It's an internal union leaders and officer lawyers also rebutted the account of the jail's warden and the Bureau of Prisons.
Raindrop, drip, drop top, top smoke.